And I just turned around and I hauled ass out of there. I was done. I wasn't dealing with that.
The hypocrisy of the cult is one of the things that turned me away the quickest.
When I turned my headlights on, it turned and looked at us. And one of the things I remember the most were the eyes were glowing red.
I see an orb of light. It is just circling these steps like it is waiting for me.
And he begins to tell them that he saw a UFO. They're basically like, what are you talking about? That's 7 foot up on a tree, peeking around it, and that's where I saw the top of the muzzle, nose, and the eyes. As soon as I made eye contact with this thing, it felt like death.
Welcome back to Tinfoil Tales. I'm your host, Brandon. Tonight we're joined by my guest, Brandy. Brandy, thanks for coming on here talking to me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Would you like to let the audience know a little bit about yourself?
Well, there's a whole lot to say, but I I was very, very sick for a very long time. I became disabled. Currently, let me jump back into current real quick, just to give you a little background on me. I basically went from bedbound to now I'm bartending. And I will tell you that that is a huge feat after being disabled for many, many years. Um, and so I wrote a book about my experience because it's quite the experience. And I decided that I needed to get it out on platforms. And so I contacted you. And I'm thankful for you to let me come on here and talk about my story. Um, it's an amazing story, and hopefully it brings some hope to people out there that are ready to give up, because I was there and I feel some sort of duty to, you know, put some hope out there. And it's not hopium. I don't, I want people to know that it's not hopium. I want people to know that what I went through was real and what's to come, because I think people that are losing hope need to hear it. And so that's why I'm here.
You mentioned that, not to make light of the situation, but like you found my show because you said Chat GPT recommended it, and
Mm-hmm.
me being the tinfoil hat guy, I interviewed an AI chatbot before. So I was like, maybe I'm on the good graces now of the AI overlords. So when they take over, I'll be one of the ones they spare.
Right? We can only hope.
Yeah.
We never know.
Right.
But yeah, they did. They recommended you. I basically put in what my book was about and said, give me, the podcasters that I should contact. And you were one of them. So here I am. Because ultimately my story is definitely a conspiracy theory, because it's something that's not out yet. And so anytime you talk about, something that's not out yet and people don't know about, it falls under the conspiracy theory lane, and that's fine. I'll take it. I think there's a lot of people out in the world right now that are thinking outside the box and looking at things and questioning things, and that's what we're supposed to do. And so I will take those people over the people that are not thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I am incredibly grateful for what I went through. And it's important, I think, for people to understand that my background was basically that I had been sick for many, many years. I've had issues my whole life, but um, in 2017, they did genetic testing on me, and they found some really rare genetic mutations. Um, and that kind of kicked off the whole thing, I believe. I do believe that a lot of this was kind of, like maybe there were a lot of NDAs signed and people that were involved couldn't speak of it because it's not out yet. But to give you a little background on my health journey, um, besides the rare genetic mutations, I also had um, cancer. I had pulmonary embolisms. My joints, because of my genetics, dislocated very easily. So I would dislocate joints on the regular. I remember bartending at one point years ago and my knee dislocated and I'd have to pop it back in and it was horribly painful. And and so, there was a lot of background to what happened to me, but and there is a story behind the story that I can't talk a lot about right now. I may talk about it later on in another book, but the book that I wrote is called Chronically Ill No More because I was indeed very chronically ill. I ended up becoming bedbound and couldn't walk without a wheelchair. I had 5 herniated discs. I had spinal stenosis, degenerative disc disease, scoliosis, and that was mainly because of my genetics, where my joints would dislocate, but even my spine would dislocate. And so it's called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. There's a lot of people out there that have it, but it's a new thing. We didn't know about it years ago. I also was somebody that couldn't be numbed at the dentist. And so that created a lot of pain for me that, a lot of people don't go through. Um, but anyway, I think I became disabled in 2011. But in 2005, I had cancer and, had to have a full hysterectomy because of that. And a lot of things happened from that. And then I just kept getting more and more sick. I tried to go back to work, I wasn't able to. And then my pain doctor, I ended up becoming, well, I was on a lot of pain medicine. I was on a fentanyl patch. I was on, hydromorphone. I had PTSD, anxiety, depression, a whole lot of things that I was on medication for. And at the time, I was super thankful for that medication. But um, today, I'm super thankful for being off that medication. But um, so I believe the kickoff was in 2017 when they did the genetic testing on me. And they found these things that I needed to, they needed to deal with. Um, and so on March, on my birthday in 2020, um, I believe they came to get me. And when I say they, who I mean is the military, I believe was involved. Um, and there's a reason for that in the backstory, which I can't really yet talk about, but um, there's only a certain number of people or entities or organizations that can come to your door and knock on your door and not show up on your Ring camera. And but then I started looking out my Ring camera and I started seeing stuff. And I took screenshots on my phone. I do have a lot of some screenshots in my book. Um, but and some people think, and I kind of want to start this off with, some people believe that what I experienced was alien. Some people believe that what I experienced was the military. Some people believe that it may have been a combination of both. Some people believe it was just a spiritual experience. So there's many aspects of it that people relate to and kind of hold on to. And that's fine. I have my own opinion about who it was and why they were there. And the backstory kind of gives a lot to that, but it's a very personal thing, and so I won't go into that right now. But um, I first started seeing SOSs outside my house. I thought maybe my camera had been taken over, hacked, and I was seeing medical crosses everywhere. And so, of course, I have screenshots of that, but um, and for whatever reason, it's almost like I felt like I was being led through something. Um, and they showed me this little electric guy on my patio, and there was a current running through him, and his eyes were being removed and put back in, and his lips were being removed and put back on. And I was like, what in the world is going on? And I believe now, looking back on that they were showing me that whoever it was, was showing me that I was about to go through a transformation. And that's exactly what I went through. It was, it is an almost unbelievable story. And I get that. But I'm very honest. I don't lie. And I would never tell people that I believe something happened if it didn't. That's just not who I am. I would never put myself in the way of all the darts that have been thrown at me where people don't believe, or you know excuse me. But ultimately, I'm out here talking about this because I think it's important for people that are like I was, which was I was ready to give up. I became bedbound. I couldn't walk without a wheelchair, and so I was in severe pain. And I remember feeling that way, and I don't want anybody to feel that way. I get it, it happens, but I think ultimately, if people understand what might be possible in the near future, then they can hold on for that, like one last moment. And so, anyway, that night when they came, the next day, I would say, because I didn't answer the door and I was scared. I was by myself. It was 11 p.m. at night. I didn't know what to think. Um, and so the next day, I'm laying in bed as I usually was, and I got hit by a frequency. And when I say I got hit by it, I'm talking, it rocked my world. Um, it hurt in the places that I already hurt. I was also suffering from, I'd had like 4 abdominal surgeries for adhesions and basically I needed back surgery. They wouldn't do back surgery on me because I grew adhesions so badly. And so I was really unfixable. And I do believe that they chose me because I was unfixable. And for another reason, the personal reason. But so it hurt. I was rolling around the bed to get away from it. And my husband at the time was like, "Are you okay? What's going on?" He thought I was crazy. I get it. And I told him I have this frequency. It's literally vibrating my whole body and it hurts. And um and so that continued for a couple years. But part of what happened during that time was that, like I said, it was like I was being led through something. And I went through, um, it felt like they were doing surgery on me without cutting me. Um, it felt like I could feel them working on my joints. And during that time, when I would look out my Ring camera, they would show a picture of me laying on my stomach. And so I would lay on my stomach and it felt like they were working on my back. They showed me a picture of me holding my eyes open. And I did that and it felt like they were doing laser surgery on my eyes. And I didn't have to wear glasses after that. And I believe that there were humans involved because of some of the things that happened during that time. After they worked on my joints, which, by the way, at the time, my shoulder was dislocated for a month and I couldn't get it back in, couldn't wash my own hair. And they wrote outside my front door, it's Raise Your Arm Day. And I could feel them working in my shoulder. And then all of a sudden, I could raise my arm. And I will tell you that since this time, I have not had another dislocation since. And I was dislocating on the regular. So to say that, all of a sudden I haven't had a dislocation is a big deal. But also, there was something else going on, which was that I was going through some sort of um, awakening where I felt like I just felt like I needed to. I had a lifetime of trauma. I had abuse. I had a whole lot of things that I went through, and which is why I had PTSD and anxiety and depression. And um, I felt like I just needed to forgive people and let things go. I had a lot of death in my life. My mom died when I was 2. That was kind of the start of the death in my life, and it was probably every 3 years I lost somebody very close to me. And and so I just started working on myself and really genuinely like focusing on being a better person, a better human, because ultimately I do believe that hurt people hurt others. And I didn't want to be that person. But I felt like the frequency they were hitting me with, it was like it was raising my frequency. And I was able to kind of see these things that I needed to work on. And I started doing that. Like I started doing deep breathing exercises. I started really focusing on my happiness and forgiving people, moving on and releasing all that stuff from my body. And I'll tell you, as I did that, I felt lighter and lighter and lighter. And that was that was such an amazing time. I even during that time, I have a child that was in the military, and he got deployed twice during this time. And I didn't know what to do. I was angry. I was like, I don't want my child to die over somebody's agenda. And so I wrote some poetry, which is in the book. um it got a little political, but ultimately I hope people can see that what I was going through, and kind of where I was at, and it was my outlet. And so I picked a creative outlet. I started making jewelry while I was in bed, um and ultimately started a jewelry business. But um so when they were working on my joints one day, I happened to look out my Ring camera, as I always did. And I have 30,000 screenshots from this time. I did see some what appeared to be alien ships to me. I can't say for sure. Again, my viewpoint on it is that possibly it was the military. Um, but not that I don't believe that there's the possibility of aliens. I just, because of what happened and how it happened, I kind of believe that there was some humans involved. Um, but yeah, it was, where was I going with that? Bring me back. Where was I at?
I have some
Um,
questions, and I don't like to interrupt,
yeah,
but
no, go.
you basically, the way I'm hearing this and taking this, there was something wrong, and someone, either military, some people think alien, whatever,
Mhm.
has basically cured you from the illness you
Yeah.
had.
Yeah, the many illnesses, on top of, not just physically, because ultimately, like, if you have herniated discs and spinal stenosis, like, unless you have surgery, it's not going to get any better, and I recently, in the last 6 months, fell and had to go to the emergency room, and I had cracked my tailbone, and but they did some imaging of my back, and immediately when the doctor came, because it was the first imaging I've had since this happened, and I said to the doctor, I said, can you please go back and look and see if you see any herniated discs, any spinal steno, everything I had. I said, can you please go look? And he kind of looked at me funny and said, okay. And he came back and he said, "No, I don't see any of that." And not that I didn't know I was healed, but to hear that from a doctor, I was like, "Yep, I knew that. I knew that because my pain, I mean, I was on so much medicine, and during this time, it was like I was whatever frequency they were hitting me with, it definitely helped me come off all the medicine. I went back into my pain management doctor and I said, "Here you go. Here's the last corner of my fentanyl patch." And he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "I'm off all my medicine." And he said, "How is that possible?" And I said, "Well, this is what I think happened." And the doctor's office that got me into this research study, which was a research study through the local college, they I live in Tucson, Arizona. It's called Banner. They're part of the University of Arizona. I got into there for a research study. That's how it all started. And I will tell you that the doctor that I saw, which was a geneticist, she never told me that she worked in cancer. And when I dug on her, when this started, and I was like, okay, what's going on? I believe that there are people involved in this. Why is this happening? And so I dug on her and I found out that she was actually someone that worked in cancer. But she didn't tell me that. And I thought, why wouldn't she tell me that she works in cancer? Cancer doctors do not work outside of cancer. They just don't. And I knew that, but I didn't get the opportunity to see her again after I figured that out. She moved. Both of my main doctors, my pain management doctor and my primary care doctor, they retired right after this, kind of during my healing. And I thought, well, that's odd because both of them said, "Oh, we'll never retire." And so I thought, gosh, that's really odd that they both retired right about the same time. But and so of course I started doing research into who has this technology, what is this technology? Because I went through some sort of spiritual awakening where, and I won't go into that. That's in the book, but it I mean, it is. It's like you lose your mind and you have to find it, and people think you're crazy because you're talking about, things that people don't understand. I went down every rabbit hole. I was like, I just want to find the truth in the world. I was seeing things like, I don't know if you know who David Paulides is,
Yeah, I do.
but so I contacted him because I couldn't figure out what I was going through at the time. And I had seen a picture of him in the newspaper. And when I looked at this picture, I saw fairies and little people all around him. And he was in the woods. And I was like, what in the world am I seeing? And so I contacted him and I said, "Are there fairies in this picture?" And he said, what?" And I said, "This is what I'm seeing. I don't know why I'm seeing this. I am going through something, some sort of healing." Um, and I said, "I don't know what I'm going through." And the only response I got from him is, "You're going through something beautiful." And I thought, okay, well, somehow he knows what I'm going through. I don't know how he knows, but genuinely, the awakening and what I believe to be an ascension, but um, I didn't believe uh, in a lot of things before I went through this, and when you go through something like this, it changes you completely, and I feel really proud of the person that I am today, but it's taken me a lot to get here. I've lost people along the way, um, that I'm sad about, but ultimately, I almost feel like this is some sort of a mission that I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to tell this story. Um, so right after I got out of bed, oh, let me go back. Sorry. During the time that they were working on my joints and I happened to look out my Ring camera, it was like a beautiful painting that an artist had made. And at the bottom of that painting was a signature. And so I looked up that name because I could read the signature. And they had just been working on my joints. And when I looked up that name, it was an orthopedic surgeon in Phoenix. And I was like, okay, what are the odds of that? There is no way that they were working on my joints. I have not had a dislocation since. And the name underneath this photograph or painting or whatever it is an orthopedic surgeon. They had told me through the research study to see a neurologist up in Phoenix. And we had a meeting just before this healing started. We had a video call. And right after this healing started, I would say maybe 4 to 5 days after the frequency hit me, the neurologist called me and we didn't have an appointment. And he said immediately, "How does your back feel?" Just like that. And I immediately said back to him, "Do you know about the frequency?" And he would not answer that question. I asked it 3 times. He kept avoiding. And I was like, "Okay, you're not allowed to talk about it." I believe that everybody that was involved was under an NDA. And so as I started researching what in the world this was, I came across something called med beds. And it's a hot topic. I mean, it's like it's a topic that there's a whole lot of misinformation about. And I think that that's another reason that I was supposed to come out and talk about this is because there's so much misinformation. And certainly I don't want people getting scammed. People message me on TikTok all the time. "How do I get into a med bed?" And I'm like, "I can't tell you that. I am not in charge of that. I'm only telling my story about being healed with what I believe to be med bed technology." Because when I was going through the awakening process, I was getting information and I was writing about stuff that I did not know about. Nikola Tesla. I knew that it was Nikola Tesla technology, but I didn't know how I knew that. Um, and so when I went back to my doctor with my fentanyl, my little fentanyl corner, um, he asked me what I thought happened, and I said, "Well, this is what I think is happening. I think that you all got me into a research study for a couple different reasons. One being personal, the other being that I was unfixable. And you started using something on me that's not out yet. And I believe it to be part of some sort of like military, maybe military alien and coordination. And I believe that whatever was used on me is going to heal a lot of people, if not everyone. Because I will tell you that my PTSD, my anxiety, my depression, gone. My pain has taken a little bit longer to go away, but this happened in 2020. And I jumped out of bed. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm healed. But I wasn't completely there was still some work that needed to be done. I had to do physical therapy. But ultimately now here I am 5 years later and I'm bartending. And to be able to do something like that after you've been so sick and so in so much pain. I was a 10 out of 10 pain patient. And so to be where I was and to now be where I am is an absolute, like some people call it a miracle, but whatever you want to call it, I want people to know that I believe that this is coming. So I'm gonna pause and give you a moment to digest all that.
What I was going to ask earlier is, what is your loved ones, your friends, your family, how do
Mm-hmm.
they feel about all this? Because if they were around and they knew how you were, like when you were sick and you
Mm-hmm.
had everything else, and now that you're well, what do they
Yeah.
think?
Well, I think that it's tough. I was in a marriage. I want to travel around this very gingerly, but I was in a marriage that I'm no longer in, with a man that I think he didn't understand what was happening, and I'm going to give him grace for that. And he kind of passed along information to my children, to people that we knew, that he basically thought that I was just addicted to pain medicine, that I was not actually in pain. And, that's so I had dealt with years of people coming at me saying, "Oh, you got to get off this pain medicine. You got, and I was like, I can't. I'm literally in so much pain that I can't." And so that was tough. It's tough when anybody doesn't believe you, when you know what happened. That's a tough situation to be in. I I've already forgiven everyone for not believing because I know that it's such a crazy story to wrap your mind around. I get it. But, I have photographic proof. And for anybody that knew me, so he had kind of basically laid the groundwork that, um, and I think that what people thought was, oh, she came off the medicine, she's okay. Like I think they kind of like excused away some things about my experience to say, oh, she came. Even for me to come off the amount of medicine that I was on should have been some sort of like miracle to everybody, but that's okay. Um, everybody looks at things differently. They're coming from a different lens, and I get that. But ultimately, I'm going to speak my truth, even if my voice shakes, and sometimes it does, but that's okay. I feel like this is that important, and that's why I put myself out in the public. To tell this story, but it does for me. I think that at some point, this story, and I even put it in the beginning of my book, I said, I hope this story makes sense at some point to some people that it doesn't make sense to. And that's okay because again, we're all coming from different places and different knowledge and I felt like when I went through the awakening and everything, it felt like my both sides of my brain started working at the same time, which had never happened. I mean, I was a pretty intelligent individual, but boy, I'll tell you after this, I feel a whole lot more intelligent. maybe because I went down every rabbit hole in the world, and did my own research. I didn't believe what anybody said. I was like, no, I'm going to find out for myself. And, it makes it even more unbelievable when you involve something like a higher power into it, um, because not everybody believes in that, and I get that. But again, I have to just tell my story the way it happened, and um, hope that those that want to believe or that do believe or whatever get something out of it, and those that are literally on the brink of giving up, they just hold on. They just hold on.
I've talked with
So,
several people that they are like Reiki healers, energy healers, frequency
mhm,
dealers. Is this something similar to what you kind of think you've like experienced? Because like, you mentioned frequency, and that's the first thing I was
mhm,
thinking of is how these
yeah,
healers have been working and channeling with people,
mhm,
and apparently that's helped them. I personally don't know anything about it. I've never dealt with it, so
yeah. So I will say that I believe, yeah, I think they're on the right track in a sense. But do I think that's the same thing as what I experienced? No, no. Um, and I had people say to me, when I was getting what some people call downloads or whatever information I was receiving, that I didn't know anything. I filled up 3 notepads of information during that time that I had a lot of it I didn't know anything about. Um, I think that the frequency that hit me is so powerful. What and looking into Nikola Tesla, I believe that Nikola Tesla came out or invented something called a direct energy weapon. And that would be used to hurt to cause harm during a war or something of that sort. I believe that somehow they've figured out that as much as it can be used to harm, it can also be used to heal. Um, and so I think that we all our bodies are energy, and we all have our own frequency. And I think, I started watching some videos during this time. There's a great YouTube video. I cannot remember the name of the gentleman that does it, but he talks about how frequencies can cure cancer and how basically they can pinpoint the frequency that the cancer is at and go in and just send a frequency in that will obliterate it, that will just demolish it. And that is basically what it felt like. I mean, it was way more powerful than what I would imagine. I've had Reiki done, and I again, I'm not putting Reiki down in any way. I think it's great. I think, whatever you can do, because not everybody has the sort of pain that I had and requires the sort of frequency that I required. That's what I think. I think that some Reiki can help people that are dealing with, light things. But I think ultimately, when you are in a place like what I was in, where there's no hope, there's no, like, I thought I was going to die in that bed. Um, I think that I needed something way stronger, which is what I believe the med beds are. I don't know that it's going to be called med beds. But there's a whole lot of things out in the world that have proven to me that this is coming. And it was almost like things were being sent to me so that I would know that this was a thing. Because how in the world would I have known, I mean, I had my phone. I was trying to test I was like, is it I originally thought that I was a targeted individual and that I was being harmed. And so I started using my phone to try and figure out what was being used on me. And so, but then when I saw outside, looking outside my Ring camera, and they're showing me these things, they showed me a hologram picture of my face outside my house. It looked like a big business card and it had my face on it. I have pictures of what appeared to be little alien guys um, that didn't look like really much of what I had thought an alien would look like. And so, um, but yeah, when the hologram picture came out, I actually have a picture of this little guy that was up in the tree, and it looked like he blew something out, and then this hologram came out. And again, I get it. It sounds a little bit cray, but genuinely, this is what happened. And again, I have, photographic proof. I have so many pictures that when I wrote the book, I couldn't even go through all the photos because there were so many. And of course, as life happens, and I went through a divorce and moved states and then moved back to Arizona, just in trying to survive life, I didn't have the time to look through all 30,000 photos, but I still have them. And so I may do a follow up with just pictures. I don't know. It's tough though, because some people that look at the photos, I kind of have to point stuff out. I'm like, oh, do you see those three little guys? One night my patio would be green. One night my patio light would be red. There would be faces. So many things happened during this time that I didn't even go into in the book because I just wanted to get the story out so quickly to hopefully spread some hope. Because I couldn't believe what I went through. So when I went back to my doctor's office and I said, this is what I think is happening. I think you were trying to get me out of a situation I was in. You were healing somebody that was unfixable. You were, I think it's Nikola Tesla technology. I don't know why I know that. I think I may have had cancer again and you were trying to cure cancer. I don't know. I don't know. But what I do know is that this is who I believe in the world is involved. There's a picture on the front cover of my book, and it is a picture of a robot that I got on my front patio during this time. It matches somebody else's robots in the world. And so I knew that that person was involved. I didn't know how, I didn't know, details, but I knew that he was involved. And I also knew because of other things that I was finding in the world, who else was involved. DARPA, I named. So recently I'm always looking on the internet to see anybody that has any kind of information as to when this is going to come out. Somebody that I follow that was talking about med beds on Twitter, he happened to say that Raytheon, an organization in Tucson, Arizona, which is where I am and where I was healed, is who is making this technology. That they are a part of this technology coming together that will eventually be brought out. And immediately when I read that, I got elated. I was like, are you kidding me? So the technology that I've been healed with it was created in Tucson? I was just blown away because I know what happened, but to have any kind of proof in the world, any kind of just to make a connection like that was amazing. And I even said under the comment, I said, gosh, Raytheon went right by me. I did not name them. I named a lot of other people involved, but I did not name Raytheon. And so that was kind of an amazing moment for me. I was like, do you know where I am? I'm in Tucson, Arizona, you know? And so after having not been believed by so many people for so long, to have even that little tidbit of, gosh, for me, it was validation.
You
And
mentioned
so,
Raytheon
um,
and where I work at in Dirt for my normal job, our main office, like the next door building is Raytheon for us down here.
mm,
So when you mentioned that, I was like, yeah,
wow.
there's one right next door to my company.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, we have Honeywell, we have Raytheon. And what's funny is right out of bed, I started a jewelry business and I was in downtown Tucson. And it was weird. It was like I would just get chills, and I would say to the person that walked into my little pop-up jewelry shop, I would say, I don't know why, but I'm supposed to tell you my story. And every person that I said that to said back to me after I told them, they said, I know why you were supposed to tell me. And then they would tell me why, like, I have cancer, or I mean, there were so many different stories, but ultimately, there were a couple that were really amazing, which one was a lady. I told her, and she said, I know why you're supposed to tell me. She said, have you ever heard of med beds? And I said, yes, yes, I have. And she said, well, I've heard of med beds too. She said, what I've heard is that they're frequency based. And I said, well, that makes a whole lot of sense, doesn't it? She said, yes, but she said, now I'm about to really freak you out. She said, what I've also heard is that the military is in charge of this technology currently until it comes out, and they're healing chronically ill patients first. And I got full body chills and I said, yep. That makes a lot of sense with my story too, right? And she said, yes. And it's been quite a journey, because it's almost like certain people are just, I'm meant to talk to, I'm meant to tell my story to. And they have come back with some amazing information for me, things like, I knew that this technology existed, but just hearing from somebody that um, was healed with it is amazing. And so it's been, with the ups and downs. There's been ups and downs, but ultimately, I think it's been amazing to just talk to people. And I really try hard to tell people, there are a lot of scammers out there. Don't get scammed. There are some med beds out there. People call them med beds, but from my research, what I've found is that those med beds are basically like a hyperbaric chamber with frequencies, and that's not the med bed technology that I believe is coming. I think what's coming is way more powerful. I think it possibly could regrow limbs, regrow things that are just going to change the way people live for the better. And so I can't say for sure because I haven't been told by anyone with that technology, but I've done a whole lot of research. There's some people out there. I was super upset because one of the people that I followed right after this, she was talking about med beds. And so I followed her, and I put out there, I said to people in her group, I said, oh my gosh, yeah, med beds exist. I was healed with it. And then I recently heard one of her, or saw one of her moderators saying, oh, if somebody's saying that they've been healed with this technology, they're lying. And I thought, well, go back to your people. If you can verify my story, then I know you're real. I don't have to know that I'm real. I know what happened to me. But if you're saying that people are lying, then that makes me question whether, what your intentions are. And so there are a whole lot of scammers out there. And so I just really want to let people know to like be very cautious. If somebody says, send me your email address to get on a medbed list or anything like that, please don't do that. These people are just trying to get your money, they're trying to get your info. Don't do it. I believe that what's happening is first they were dealing with people that were in maybe situations they couldn't get out of, maybe children that have been harmed, maybe sexually abused, maybe, you know, people that were in really bad situations. I think that was the first wave of people to be healed with this technology. I told my doctor, I said, I believe I was supposed to be on one of the ships on the West and East Coast that was for COVID patients. Um, I said, I believe I was supposed to be on one of those ships to be healed. Um, I personally didn't think that that whole thing was what it was said to be. Um, but I think that there was a reason for that. And I think that what I went through is actually proof that, or maybe not proof, but for me, it was proof that it wasn't what they said it was. Um, and also the medical crosses that were outside my house were also the same medical crosses that were on those ships. And when I told my doctor, I believe I was supposed to be on one of those ships, he said, he just sat back in his chair with his chin dropped and he said, are you psychic? And I said, well, I don't call it that. I've always known stuff. I have great discernment. I've known stuff before it happened. And I believe that's a gift I was given. Um, and he said, well, you're amazing. He said, you are absolutely amazing. I don't know what you're going to do next, but I want to follow you. And a doctor is not going to say that if what you're saying is crazy. They're just not going to. Um, my psychiatrist that I had seen for years, I told him the whole story. And I believe they all knew. I believe that they all had signed NDAs and couldn't say to me that they knew. But because of how they reacted to me and because of how they responded, I 100% believe that they knew. Go ahead. Were you gonna ask a question?
I was gonna say, when was the last time any of this went on for you? Like, when was the last time you remember anything like this happening?
You mean in this experience?
Yes. You said you've been better since 2020, so it's been 5 years.
Well, no, I not better since 2020. I was in bed for 2 years.
Mhm.
I was bedbound for 2 years. So the whole time during that 2 years, I was being hit by this frequency. I moved to Idaho for a year. And when I got there, I had just I'd moved all my stuff by myself. Right out of bed, I moved my dog, a 15-foot moving truck, towing my car by myself. And when I got there, I started having some back pain. And so I texted, by the way, they had given me a nurse that I could text at any time, which when do they do that? That doesn't ever happen. And so I texted my nurse and I said, I'm having a little bit of pain and I really hope the healing frequency finds me in Idaho. And she said to me, well, I hope you feel better this weekend. And I thought, well, that's odd. It's Tuesday. So why is she talking about the weekend to me? And that weekend, the frequency hit me in Idaho. And it's strange because when it first hit me, it hurt. But I think after it started healing me, it actually started feeling good. And what I believe is that if I hadn't done the work on myself that I needed to do, like doing the deep breathing, the releasing of those that had died, the releasing of the trauma, I believe that my healing may not have gone the way that it did, but I chose to choose myself and choose healing over everything else. It didn't matter. I chose healing over everything else. And I focused on, like, every night I listen to frequency music when I sleep, because now I understand the power behind frequencies. Um, and I call it a frequency. I don't know that that's what it is, but I when the whole Nikola Tesla information came to me and I started looking into him, because I ultimately didn't really know anything about him when I got this information. I knew his name, but I didn't know anything about him. And I started doing research into him. One of the first things that I wrote down in my notepad during this time was a triangle and 369 around that triangle. And I didn't know why I even wrote it. And I thought, well, that's funny. My birthday is 3/6. And is that why I'm getting this information? And then I started looking into Nikola Tesla and his whole 369 theory and everything about that. And then the fact that Nikola Tesla actually spoke about being visited by aliens. And um so there was a whole lot of information that I found out about him that made a lot of sense to my situation. And I think that what they've figured out is that whatever he created or invented is something that they're going to use to heal.
We've been going on close to an hour, and I usually try and keep the episodes to an hour. But
Yeah.
before we wrap it up, I would like for you to kind of let everyone know a little bit more about the book, where they can find it at,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
everything else about that.
sure. So it's called Chronically Ill No More, which is kind of a funny title. It's not grammatically correct, but it's called Chronically Ill No More. My name is Brandy Bach. And you can get it on Amazon. Um, I will tell you that in Amazon you can you get the paperback, you get the Kindle version, you get the hardback cover. Um, I will tell you that the hardback cover has the better photos in the book, because I did not know that I had chosen better print quality just for the hardback and not for the other books. And so I had to end up raising the price on the hardback just because it was eating up anything that I made from it. And so, not that it's all about money. And again, it's more about getting the story out there. But so I did raise the price on that book a little bit just to encounter the costs. But you will see better photos in that, and maybe from the Kindle version as well. But the paperback is not as great with the pictures. They're a little bit more blurry, and the pictures are already blurry to begin with. So it's like you want the best version. But yeah. So, and you can also find me on TikTok. I think I'm Brandy B. And I'm on Twitter. Most of my profile names are Brandy B. I'm on YouTube. I put out my poems that I wrote in the book during that time. And I think at some point probably my role in helping humanity would be either helping people through their awakening, or maybe just answering questions about the technology that people may be afraid of when it comes out, because I think there's a lot of misinformation. So um but I would encourage people, I really want to encourage people that, I reversed diabetes. I did a whole lot of work on my diet. I cut sugar out, I cut processed foods out, and I want people to know that you can do this. Like, if I can do it, anybody can do it. Um, I reversed a whole lot of things. And do I think I had help initially? Absolutely. But I think it gave me the drive to want to. I mean, I felt like I could almost conquer the world. I felt almost like a superhero, like I could do anything that I put my mind to. And I want people to know that they can do that too. So yeah, that's that was probably a long answer, but
No, you're fine. I will make sure to include a link to the Amazon. So for anyone listening, if they're interested in checking out the book, you'll have a link on there to get to it.
yeah, that'd be great. That would be great. And if anybody has any questions, my email address is in the book. But if you want to share that as well, I'd be fine with that. It's chronically ill no more at gmail.com.
Okay, yeah, I can include that too. Well,
Perfect.
Brandy, it has been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure talking to you too. I'm glad we finally got to it.
It's been a little bit, but we managed to get it scheduled and get
Yeah,
on there. Yep.
absolutely. Yeah. And thank you for what you do, giving people the opportunity to have a platform. It's so invaluable. Like it's so amazing. And so thank you for what you do.
You're definitely welcome. Again, thank you for coming on here and sharing that tonight. But for anyone listening, again, make sure to check out the book. And if you have any questions, you can get a hold of Brandy. But we'll check you on the next one. If you'd like to be a guest on Tinfoil Tales, remember to send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com or go to tinfoiltales.com and go to the contact section. Make sure to follow me around on all the social medias. And just remember, truth comes at a cost. Are you willing to pay the price?
I heard a story late last night about something lurking along the wood line. Huge footprints, strange lights in the sky. They claim it's nothing, but I know they lie. It's easier to laugh in my face, but something about this makes me say, what if it's real? What if they knew? What if the answers are coming from you? Spinning stories, wasting my time, hearing voices, is it all in their minds? They can call me crazy, but I just want some proof. What if it's true? What if it's real? What if it's true? What if the world's not what we knew? Tinfoil tales pulling me in, a story that starts where the logic ends. What if it's real? What if it's true? The answers are waiting, they're waiting for you. They see a dog man walking, or maybe a mothman flies above the buried giants, hidden beneath the lies. They say it's just stories, it's all make-believe. Fairy tales for the things we can't perceive. They want to keep us blinded, they want to break our will. But I'm not buying it, I'm not swallowing another pill. Force-fed poison, the lies we're made to believe. What if the truth could set us free? Alien signals traveling through time, secret space programs erasing their minds. They call them crazy, but I just need some proof. What if it's true? What if it's real? What if it's true? What if the world's not what we knew? Tinfoil tales pulling me in, a story that starts where the logic ends. What if it's real? What if it's true? The answers are waiting, they're waiting for you. They laugh, they lie, we all could die, but the signs are there if you open your eyes. Aliens, cryptids, demons, ghosts, the Nephilim too. What if it's me? Or what if it's real? What if it's real? What if it's true? What if the world's not what we knew? Tinfoil tales pulling me in, a story that starts where the logic ends. What if it's real? What if it's true? The answers are waiting, they're waiting for you. It's all in our heads, It's all in our minds. These voices can't be silenced. The truth must rise. Tinfoil Tales, it's pulling me through. What if it's real? What if it's true?